All started over a decade ago, almost 14 years. Since they don't allow throwaways that are new, I will use an old throwaway separate from my main account. Not sure where to start, to be honest, so probably best just to start all the way at the beginning, so here goes. On April 20th, 2004, while I was away, college, in my third year, I met this girl. The meeting itself was out of character for me. Any previous girlfriends, hookups, etc. were more of always people I had daily contact with. I never just walked up to a random girl and asked her out. This time, however, I was Jim and ran into her after having seen her a few days in a row, because it seemed like we both went at the same time. She made a joke about just missing each other or not seeing each other in the gym. I asked if she wanted to hang out, a general type invitation, which she said she didn't really feel like working out, so how about now? She also said something about it being 420 and nearly 420, implying she wanted to smoke weed, which I too was down for and had already planned to do so. So that's what we agreed to do, and we were going to go back to my place to do it. During the car ride, she said something like, "I'm shy. I don't usually hook up with random guys," which I didn't know quite how to take. Turns out, as I found out less than 45 minutes later, yep, hookup was exactly what I thought it was, and we had sex. Any thought of her being shy probably went out the window when we basically got out of the car and she said, "Oh, by the way, smoking weed makes me horny, so be ready." Once she left later that night, she gave me the talk. I'd only heard of guys giving girls before. It was a fun time and all, but I'm not looking for anything serious. I have your number. Maybe I'll call you sometime. However, she did call the next day and every day after for the next 3 weeks. This went on for 3 weeks pretty solid. The end of the year was coming and so were finals. It was around that time I had known Amanda enough to know there were some serious red flags. While I admit that I was starting to have feelings for her, at some level I was concerned about some serious things. The contradictions in what she said and did continued. She would say one thing and do the complete opposite to a point where I just assumed everything would be opposite. She also was secretive about things like her past and about her. I knew she was a freshman at the school, was turning 19 in a few months, and where she was from, but that's about it. This is going to sound bad, but I never did find out her last name for sure. She also never wanted to go to public, instead only wanted to sit around and have sex, smoke weed and watch TV. Sex became the whole focus of everything. It was also used as a way to make me stop asking questions. She'd say, like, "Let's not talk, let's have sex." My roommate, having been my best friend since kindergarten and from a similar background, also raised some very serious concerns about me being taken advantage of, specifically monetarily. He knew where I came from and my exact financial situation, and warned me that I was exposed and her intentions may not be all that genuine. This leads into 2 other red flags that are related. She kissed my ass like no one else ever has, to a point where everything I did, had, said, or wanted to do was the best thing ever and I was always right. It made me uncomfortable at times. She was also this impending sense that sooner or later she was going to outright ask me for money. She left a lot of open-ended situations where it certainly seemed like she wanted me to volunteer to pay for things of hers and give her money. She never did ask and I never volunteered. Despite the fact of me not knowing much about her, she knew quite a bit about me and was piecing together other things. I decided I need some time to evaluate this, and sat her down and raised some of these issues. She was quiet and didn't say a word. She then told me why she may not have been honest with me. Early on, she fell in love with me and was afraid if I knew the real her, I wouldn't want to be with her. I told her that the only way forward was to know everything. She told me that actually no, she will only tell me this. She was failing out of school and basically had already stopped going to class months ago. The university was kicking her out. However, since she loved me, we could stay together if she came back next year and just live with me. I obviously freaked out, having only known her for 3 weeks. Certainly wasn't in love. There was going to be no chance of us living together. We agreed to take a break for finals week. Despite her not being enrolled in school, I was taking it seriously. I wasn't about to mess up my entire third year over something like this, as was the case with everything else. The agreement was a contradiction and she did start calling, which I ignored. I was dead serious about finishing the year and doing well with finals. It was at this point the volume of calls, AOL Instant Messenger messages and emails went crazy. She was sending all sorts of messages like, "You don't love me," how much she loved me, how I'm the only one for her, and all sorts of stuff along those lines. About 10 to 12 calls a day, 20 to 40 instant messages, and a few emails. Then the photos started coming. Racy, sexy photos to start, with clothes, underwear, bathing suit stuff. Then When I didn't reply to those, it became full-on nudes and very sexual poses. I didn't respond to any of these. So once finals were over, she kept badgering me that I promised to talk to her once they were over, which I did. I finally called her and told her that her actions and the whole thing creeped me out. I also explained how we were moving into two different directions, and that school was and is my priority. I wanted to graduate on time and not be distracted by all of this. She went all ballistic about being in love and how we had more than just sex. It was a type of forever contract. It was then that I told her that further contact wasn't ever going to happen, and that she too should move on. Goodbye and good luck. There was one last-ditch effort on her part as she came to my apartment and was banging on the door. My roommate and I ignored her. Despite finals being over for he and I, others still had 1 day left. Someone called the police for the noises and they apparently shoveled her out. We didn't call and we didn't answer the door when they knocked either. I left school in 3 days as planned, thinking it would be over. My roommate was kind of paranoid about her coming and ruining all of our stuff, since we had already signed a lease to live there again next year. He was all worried she would never leave us alone, so as a precaution, he paid $300 to get the landlord to give us an apartment in the same building, but on the 3rd floor and opposite side of the building. They agreed and we took that for the next year. The phone calls and stuff died down for a couple of weeks, and I went about my summer. Then the messages started up again, same thing, love me this, we belong together. She wasn't going to give up. Here's a picture of me naked and spread eagle on a bed. I blocked her online as best as I could, and since this was the early days of Facebook, I removed everything from my profile that gave away specific information about anything. The phone company charged to block numbers, so I had to pay $9.99 a year each to block 3 numbers, her cell phone, and all anonymous calls. That was bullshit. Every now and then I get calls and random messages on AOL from other screen names and phone numbers. It was her. I'd always hang up or ignore them. Eventually, despite having my AOL screen name forever, I changed it. The only thing left was my phone. That was pretty well blocked and would only get bothered a little bit. I was finally out of the woods, I thought. The last year of school came and went. I would still get random phone calls, and it was her maybe once or twice a month, usually during the drunk dial hours. I thought it was weird though, but I honestly was not concerned. I graduated on time and moved on to postgraduate stuff in my field. The call still came, which was really weird, as it was 2 to 3 years later, still same theme, but way less frequently. I took a job in a field and was given a cell phone as a part of my contract and allowed personal calls, so I decided to finally change my number. I figured it was over. However, that was short-lived. My company website has a front-facing list of people who work here, all with our photos and work email and work extensions on it. I then started getting emails from her there, always from a different email address, always still trying to get back into contact. So this was now 2008, 4 years later. I was still getting emails every now and again. The emails would contain something that was clearly meant to get my attention. Maybe they had my work address in them and a threat of stopping by. Maybe a question like, do you still live at, and then showing my mom's address. I had done a pretty good job of being aware of all of this, and I've done anything I can to limit the amount of personal information of mine that appears online. I did get one voicemail a while ago. That was clearly her, but all they said is, "Oh shit, I shouldn't be calling this number. I don't want to get in trouble," and hung up. 100% her voice. The emails have continued over the last 13 years, always meant to get my attention and bait me into replying, sometimes still with pictures. However, in the last 2 years or so, the messages have been more somber. They've taken a more reflective view. Today, after 11 years, I finally graduated college. It's because of you. I did it for you. I still love you. Remember, this was someone I knew for 21 days, nearly 14 years ago. It's downright crazy. I've been married for 10 years in June. I met my wife 12 years ago. I have obviously moved on. We have a child due in 6 months, our first. But the reason why I post this is that on Valentine's Day, I got another email on my work address from her. This month really was meant to get me to respond. The opening line made a reference to the #MeToo movement and said that she would no longer keep quiet to protect my reputation. I was floored, but it isn't what you think. No, she isn't trying to make the silly claim that what we had wasn't consensual. She is coming together to tell me, and apparently the world, that she had a baby 9 months after we were last together, and it's mine. No explanation as to why she never mentioned it, nor even hinted at this in the past. She wants me to know that my daughter is getting ready to graduate 8th grade, and it's time she met her father. Plus, she adds, there's going to be some financial catch-up we need to do. She left a phone number to call with a deadline. Apparently, if I don't respond within a week and call her, she is going to call my company and expose this. For the record, I wore a condom every time we had sex, even when Amanda said I didn't have to if I didn't want to, which was like 4 days into knowing her. I know they're not 100%, but with all the other factors and the fact that this has never been mentioned, I'm nearly certain it's a hoax. I'm slightly concerned how my wife would take this, especially since we have tried so long to have kids, but I'm not quite ready to tell her any of this because I don't want to upset her needlessly over what I really think is nothing more than some desperate attempt to get my attention. I'm also obviously not going to panic and run off and try to pay something off. If I ever got that far, I would demand a paternity test and deal with the results of that. I still don't think it'll get that far. Part of me senses this might be some sort of a shakedown. I get the distinct feeling that if I call, I might be offered a way to pay out of this. I won't go along with that. I also don't intend on calling the number, replying, or engaging this in any way. If this isn't a shakedown, this is a very sad, desperate attempt to get in contact with me. So much time has gone by, I can't for the life of me figure out why she still even would think of me or not move on. So that's my story, kind of long, written mostly because I'm slightly tense and anxious about this. I don't really have anyone to talk to about this except my work friend. I'm not really telling my best friend either, because he has no idea there has been contact past our college days. He would never let me live this down. Only time will tell how this plays out. Hi guys, this is your host Horror Studio 1. So thank you guys so much for paying attention to the video still and still watching. Today at 5:30 p.m., so around 4.5 hours from when this video was first uploaded, Toronto time, I am going to be live streaming on my next channel. So go check it out. It's Hey 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 Jags Canada, and I'll leave a link in the description below. And you guys can go over there and check out the vlog channel. I am going to be doing a live stream showing you guys my life at 5:30 Toronto time today. And yeah, go check it out. Thank you. Creepy van man left us a present. My girlfriend and I go camping in the Scottish Highlands. It's super chilled. People still hitchhike without fearing for their safety. Locals will offer you a ride. Everyone talks to everyone. We frequent a particular campsite in the middle of a beautiful mountain range that's very safe and friendly. We were there one April night, so the campsite was really quiet due to the fact it was about 4 degrees. We got set up and lit a campfire. We were fairly near the toilet block since the site was empty, so before long 2 guys walked past and said hello. On their way back, they stopped for a while longer. They said they were staying in a van, and did we want to join them for a drink inside since it was so cold out. My girlfriend, ever the social butterfly, said sure and started to get up. The guys were giving me serious creep vibes, so I tend to on the side of hating everyone, so I figured I didn't want to be a party pooper and went along with their van. It was a large white transit van and actually really nice inside. There was plenty of room for all of us to sit inside, but I kinda hovered in the doorway. The van belonged to the older guy of the two, maybe mid-40s, who seemed pretty genuine. He told us he lived in the van most of the time, but brought his friend from work to the Highlands for the weekend, because he'd never been before. His friend was a younger guy, maybe mid-20s, chatty to the point of being irritating because he was drunk. Before long, the conversation turned to one that will be familiar to any woman in a same-sex relationship. Are you guys sisters? No, we're together. Well, damn. Do you not miss dick? Can I watch? Etc, etc, etc. At this point, we'd been there maybe half an hour and it was really pitch black outside, so we decided to call it a night. It was all very pleasant when we left, although younger guy had gotten pretty quiet when we said we were leaving. About 15 minutes after we got into our tiny pop-up tent, we hear younger guy saying, "Girls, let me in." My girlfriend says, "No, go away," in a very assertive voice. We thought he'd gone until a few minutes later, we heard someone fumbling around with the zip on our tent door. I was terrified and froze, but my girlfriend grabbed the zip, which was right above our heads, and stopped him from pulling it up any further. He whispered, "We showed you a good time. Now it's time for you to show me a good time." My girlfriend told him to F off and loudly shouted some extra insults at him in case anyone could hear, but I'm not sure there was anyone but us and the van men for miles. He kept fumbling around with the zip for another few minutes, then went away. We were terrified for the rest of the nights, and my girlfriend kept her hand on the zip just in case. We packed up and ran at first light. We left the car unlocked because it was usually such a safe campsite, and we're always in and out the car for supplies. I brought an extra hoodie just in case, and I put it on as we left. A few hours later, I put my hand in the pocket and found a used condom. The creepy reprobate had used a condom on himself and tucked it into my pocket for me to find later. The thought of him sitting in our car filling that condom gives me the heave. A few years later, at the same campsite, we bumped into the older guy. He smiled at us apologetically and walked away without giving us anything, and without any of us saying a word. What's in the box? When I attended university a few years ago, I had a peculiar roommate named Stetson. He was nice, intelligent, and slept 4 feet away from me. He was a drama major and had a few eccentric personality traits. He and I both liked a girl in our apartment complex, but never really competed for her affection. We both considered her to be out of our league. Fast forward 3 months to April 6, 2010. I returned to my apartment at 9 p.m. and began to make myself a fruit smoothie. Just as I finished pouring in the ingredients, my roommate Ezra walks in and stands frozen in his footsteps, cautiously evaluating me. "Where have you been?" I defensively replied. "The testing center." "Why are you acting like that? You're freaking me out." He proceeded to explain that I've been implicated in an assault and attempted kidnapping. My blood ran cold and I started shaking. He continued to explain that just before I had arrived, my roommate Stetson had sent a text to the girl we liked. The text basically said, "Me and him have a scavenger hunt set up for you in the laundry room. Come down to the basement." She reluctantly went to the basement where she found herself alone with Stetson with a large plastic bin with a lid. Opened the box to start the scavenger hunt. Again, she reluctantly obliged. The moment she realized the bin was empty, she felt a sharp pain on her arm. As his taser unleashed its voltage into her body, he grabbed her as she fell to the floor and covered her mouth with one hand and handcuffed her with the other. As she regained her bearings, she bit down on his hand, screamed, and began to struggle. At this point, he realized she was not going to fit quietly and unconsciously into the box and decided to try Plan B. "April Fools," he said stupidly. She was stunned again, but this time by the stupidity of his words. She demanded that he remove the handcuffs, which he did. She ran back to her apartment and told everyone what happened. My roommate killed my appetite, so I dumped the blender in the garbage and had to explain to everyone that I was not involved in the crime. Fortunately, he is in prison. She is happily engaged, and I'm just doing my best to avoid scavenger hunts. Oh, and by the way, Stetson later confessed that he was going to drive off of a cliff with her in the trunk. My dog and I booked it back to the house. Hello, I've been reading this Reddit a lot in the past 2 days, and I thought I would share a story of one of the times I almost got kidnapped. I'm 19 years old now, I'm a girl, but this happened like a year or two ago, so I was like 18 then? It was my senior year of high school, and I just got a new puppy a few months earlier. I had then recently made a point to walk him every day after I got home from school. Now, my dog is a Jack Russell Terrier mix, so he's short and kind of fat. He has a scruffy look that makes him look like a puppy. Anyways, I usually took the same route every day. I would leave my cul-de-sac and make a loop around the neighborhood and come back to my house. This would take about 30 to 45 minutes every 2 days or so. I would switch it up. This was in the month of April, and I live in Georgia, so it was really hot. If you stood in the sun for too long, you'd definitely pass out. So, I was wearing some short athletic shorts and a t-shirt. I'm nearing the end of my walk and am on the last street before I turn onto my cul-de-sac. Now walking in the street, you keep to the side to let cars pass, so every now and then, I would look back to just make sure I wasn't in anyone's way. I was on the last street before reaching my cul-de-sac. I'm probably about 50 feet away from my street when this tan-colored pickup truck drives up behind me and starts creeping. I step to the side of the street to let it pass, but it doesn't. I start to feel uneasy. The truck windows roll down, and all of a sudden I hear a man's voice shout, "Puppy," or something like that. I thought, oh, they just want to see the dog, and I glance over my shoulder, expecting to see someone sticking their head out the window, but no one is. I turn back around and pick up my speed. All of a sudden, the truck stops creeping and comes to a stop in the middle of the road. I realize that this could be the day I get kidnapped, so I don't look back and start walking really fast and turn onto my street. As soon as I am out of view, I shoot like lightning and started booking it down the street, leash in hand. There's only 6 houses in my cul-de-sac, and I don't want these guys to know which one I live in. I run really fast towards my house, and my little dog does his best to keep up. I hope the truck doesn't pull into view so they won't see me running. I finally get to my driveway and run into the carport and into the house. I probably got from the top of my street into my house in like 35 seconds. I run straight to the front blinds to look out. I see the truck slowly drive past the top of my street and continue on. I was so relieved. And I haven't walked my dog around the neighborhood since then, poor dog. Creepy tan pickup truck gets... Let's not meet again. Ever. A strange proposal. Sorry in advance for my bad English, but I'm not a native speaker. I just came across a subreddit and thought a lot of any of my life experiences could fit here. When I remember what I'm about to tell, I almost felt sick and immediately felt assured it would fit indeed. So this happened back when I was a child, in a country of Southern Europe. Though now I live in a different place. Back then I lived with my parents in a small town, surrounded by beautiful and calm woods in the northern part of the country. The climate was not really Mediterranean. In fact, my town was just 30 kilometers away from one of the rainiest places in Europe. So back to the story. It was a Sunday afternoon of April, and it rained mildly. My friend and me thought in our childish cluelessness that it would be a nice idea to hide behind the trees in the small park near the local church, throwing pine cones against the cars which went by the road. We just guessed it could be a fun way to spend an otherwise boring afternoon. The game started. Thinking back to it now, I can't help smiling and realizing how stupid it all was, but whatever. We'd be careful not to hit the windshields because, pine cones are not that hard, but you can never be sure you're not going to break the glass. However, I guess my friend was not having much fun, so he started to aim at them. I wasn't okay with it, so I just stopped throwing, screaming to him I'd just ride my bike back home if he kept doing so. At the precise moment I pronounced those words, I heard a harsh noise, which made me instantly feel uncomfortable. A car was slowing down, its blinker pointing to the right. And now I just thought, because I wasn't simply able to express any sound. I didn't see my friend during those moments, but I could tell he couldn't move like me. Really strange. We were like frozen in place. Our games were about to stop, and our parents would beat the shit out of us. Meanwhile, the driver had parked the car and now she, a woman, was opening the door. Then we saw her. She had this long, curly blonde hair and a pair of thick glasses. Her face was, to put it bluntly, emotionless. She didn't seem mad at us or anything like that. She just looked determined to understand what happened, why we damaged her windshield, and how to settle an argument, I guess. The fact that she was not yelling or something like that made me feel strange. It was like she was the first adult to approach me, guilty of something, without the intention to blame me. With hindsight, I think those facts alone were sufficient to put me on alert, but what can you do? She was only some meters from us now. It was raining heavily. Then she did something I'll never ever forget. She put a fucking grin on her already creepy face. It looked like she was happy she had to deal with us, happy we broke her windshield. She said something like, "Oh, that's bad. What do we do now? Got any ideas?" I felt my heart racing and looked in the direction of my friend. This is the funny part of the story. You must know my friend was kind of a sociopath, but definitely not in a negative way. He was not bad nor amoral. He was just a very manipulating. He would get his childish desires fulfilled by his parents, just putting on a sad face and complaining about how sterile and unhappy his existence was. Anyways, I realized my friend was sobbing quietly, but not that much. He needed her to feel sorry for him, I instantly thought. I felt somehow more peaceful and calm, because my friend was trying to put his shit together in a way I could not imitate. "Sorry, oh fuck, my mother will kill me," he continued sobbing. even pretending he wasn't able to talk without stuttering. We were just playing with a friend who was on the other side of the road. He escaped. We didn't mean to hit you. She stared and continued to fucking smile. Yeah, I saw him, she answered. Okay, now we're obviously fucked. It was plain nonsense. There were no other friends. It was just the two of us. Why did she lie? Why pretending she saw this hypothetical friend? I turned to my friend and saw him panicking. He had stopped crying and didn't know what to answer. We just stood like that for, 50 seconds? No one was saying anything, and it was all very strange. My heart was racing again. Some cars went by the road while it kept raining. She was just fucking smiling, just smiling. Then she would blink her eyes in a very evident way. Don't know how to explain it. It wasn't natural at all. It was like she wanted us to understand, and she was blinking, and if it wasn't spontaneous, well, it was just insane. Suddenly she could talk again. I live near here, about 5 kilometers away. Would you guys like to eat something at my place? We simply didn't know what to answer. It was so damn strange. We felt something was just not okay. Why didn't she bring up the topic of her broken windshield? Thankfully, my friend called on his courage and replied, although his reply was very stupid. Are you for real? We'd love to. The woman blinked her eyes again without moving. Sure, for real, she said. 15-20 seconds passed and she was still, staring at my friend with that stupid grin on her face. For real? Maybe after the tea. You can show me your panties. We got back to our bikes running and rode them to the road. We did not look back, but probably she didn't even try to chase us. She probably had been smiling at the wet trees. For all the time we rode, we went at my friend's house. We never saw that woman again. Thank goodness for alarms. This happened quite a few years ago. I'm a freshman in college, and I was in middle school from what I remember. While it is an encounter with a creepy situation, I did not encounter the individual responsible for it. Just a little backstory. While I don't remember exactly when this specifically happened anymore, I remember it was in the warmer seasons, around April. We had been cleaning out our garage and moving things around, and had ended up with a garage sale at the end of the week. Cars and people walk by our house a lot, since it is on the main street, out of our neighborhood. It lasted a whole week, probably around 4 to 5 hours in the day from 5 p.m. to 8. My dad got home at 5. Anyways, the night before, we went to get rid of all the stuff we sorted as what we can donate, recyclable, or compost worthy. I was in my sister's room. It was past midnight, and we were just hanging out watching Adult Swim. All of a sudden, our alarm shrills and we jump. All of our rooms are upstairs, and naturally we didn't hear anything. My parents burst out their rooms looking at us, before asking if we had opened the doors, and we told them that we were just watching TV. Now me and my sister tried to calm down and make light of the situation. We grabbed replica samurai swords that we had for decorative purposes, and followed my dad as he went downstairs. My brother and my mom checked all the rooms upstairs before joining us. Before we finished checking downstairs for anyone hiding, the alarm company called out house. Routine. If the alarm is triggered and nobody answers, they dispatch cops over to our house. Me and my sister grew the balls to finish my dad's job and walked around. What we found was our garage door slightly ajar. In our garage, we have a side door connected to the back door, and it was wide open. And the backyard wooden fence door was wide open. Cops came after my dad reported this and inspected the area, but didn't find anyone walking around. We weren't watching the streets, and were more concerned about if anything or anyone was in the house. So maybe they got away in a car? Nothing valuable was taken. Nothing valuable is in our garage anyways. We had organized it to store Christmas decorations, a broken TV, and my dad's tools. I can only assume that while we were organizing, someone took an interest in our house. Our neighborhood got together afterwards and started an active neighborhood watch committee to be more wary of suspicious activity. Stalker knows my full name address. I received a phone call this past Wednesday at work, this man requesting me by name. He then told me he had been following me for some time. He thought I was pretty cute, and that if I did as he said, I wouldn't get hurt. He wanted me to talk to him while he jerked off, and said if I called the cops, it wouldn't matter, as he was calling from a prepaid phone. I hung up and filed a police report immediately, as a cop happened to be parked in my parking lot. I went home, installed alarms, barricades, and procured a number of weapons, a pellet gun with CO2 and hollow expanding point pellets, a warhammer, dagger, mace, alarms, and wooden boards to block the sliding door and windows from being opened. I just moved 4 days prior to this phone call, by the way, so that's something else. I can only think of 3 opinions for who this might be. Worst case is a random of the street who comes into my work. Next is my ex-fiance. We were only together for a little over 7 months and engaged for 2, and just broke up 3 weeks ago because I told him he was smothering me, and he called me a cold-hearted, callous bitch. He does live in a different state, and the accent was local. The third option is a higher up at work I turned in for sexual harassment when he called my store, saying that if we were both single, we could be sitting in a bar vibing off each other. He still denies he said anything inappropriate and hasn't spoken to me since. Anyways, I really need some advice on where to begin with all of this. I'm scared, freaked out when I have to move locations, and have been in touch with the police department to get a concealed carry permit, but the next mandatory class isn't until the end of the month. Do you guys have any advice? Thank you. Racist black guy in LA Koreatown. This happened last April. Me and a couple friends were in LA for the Korean Music Festival, and we were walking from a restaurant where we'd met up with some other folks to a nearby place that sells Korean waffles. Pertinent background: my friend and I are white girls, her boyfriend is a big burly Mexican guy. Anyways, it was probably a 4-block walk, some of which was on a very quiet streets that didn't have any storefronts. At that point, some random ass dude walks up and starts trying to chat with us. My girlfriend and I kept walking and ignored him, but her boyfriend engaged him in conversation. I rolled my eyes, cause I'm not a fan of talking to random strangers, especially out on desolate streets, but I thought to myself that my friend Alex must not be afraid of him due to his imposing figure. As we got closer to the waffle shop, this dude starts to get loud and angry because my friend and I are ignoring him. He starts bitching about how he's so sure we thought he wanted money. We kept ignoring him and walked into the shop. The guy follows us into the very small, very quiet shop and starts yelling at us while we're standing in line to order. What I want to know is, what do 2 white girls and a Mexican have to do in a Korean shop? Implying that we picked a random place to go inside and get away from him. He starts to rant at us and do weird shit, like mock us while we make our orders. He then goes around to the other patrons in the shop asking nonsensical shit in Korean to them, apparently trying to make the point that this was his turf and we had no right to be there because we weren't Korean. I'll never forget the sight of him putting his hands together, bowing and yelling, "Thank you," in Korean to these 2 terrified elderly folks who were just trying to enjoy their waffles. We didn't really know what to do. Do we call the cops ourselves or let the shop owners handle it? Is he gonna escalate this and get violence? Thankfully, unbeknownst to them, the girls who worked there had called police as soon as he started making trouble, and the cops showed up really quickly and got rid of him. This isn't as intense as a lot of stories on here, but his ironic racist bullshit still pisses me off when I think about it, and it's one of the scariest things that's ever happened to me while traveling. The Dave Saga. I friggin' love the subreddit, and I've been reading through it constantly the past few days. Now I'm inspired to tell my own story of the creepiest creep I've had the misfortune of knowing. It began in August 2008. I was a lonely, naive 18-year-old girl with far more one-night stands than functional relationships under my belt. A few of my friends decided to set me up with Dave, a 26-year-old ex-Marine who was dishonorably discharged. While this should have been my first red flag, I must emphasize that I was a little drunk idiot who ignored all signs saying he was trouble. Honestly, I'm quite shallow, and Dave was very attractive. So Dave and I started hanging out and spent a week straight together. As the days progressed, I started getting the feeling that maybe we're not so perfectly matched. First of all, he had a wall of guns in his apartment, an entire wall filled with guns. Second, despite the ounces of weed he'd smoked, he was so hyper that it grated my nerves. Third, he was showing signs of being possessive. He had taken me to a party with his friends, and they were all being nice and welcoming. Some of them invited me upstairs to smoke a bowl, and I accepted. When I got back downstairs, Dave started freaking out at his friends for stealing me away or whatever, and announced that we were leaving right that second. The icing on the cake was that I'd heard rumors going around that he had an STD. Luckily, I hadn't slept with him. Anyways, our week of hanging out ended with me going to a music festival. I got back and decided not to text Dave, because the distance helped me realize I needed to evaluate whether I should continue things with him or not. A few days go by, and then out of the blue, I get a text message from him saying why I won't have sex with him. I decide that this is my out, because who the fuck asks something like that over a text message after not speaking for days? So 10 days after our first little affair started, I ended it. Cue lots of angry texts insulting me for being a frigid bitch who won't open her legs for little Dave. So that is where the Dave saga ended, right? Wrong. 5 minutes later, he calls me and sends me 6 text messages trying to apologize. The text messages are pathetic. They included quotes like, "I'm bearing this guilt and I want to rid of it so badly. I didn't deserve you. I promise I will not disappoint you, and please, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." He insists he needs to apologize to me in person. After I'm done gagging, I tell him gently but firmly that an apology is not necessary and he can go away now. He continues trying to contact me for about a week. It ended with me telling him I did not want to talk to him or see him ever again. However, Dave obviously does not take me seriously. Dave starts harassing me. I got calls, texts, Facebook messages, the works. He started driving by my work and texting me saying, "I see you. I want to come inside and talk to you." Luckily, he didn't. He started showing up at parties I was at. The weird thing was, he would never come up and talk to me. I wouldn't even know he was there until he texted me later saying he saw me. I began getting really concerned and documenting everything he said to me in case I needed to go to the police. The last straw happened in April 2009, when he messaged my friends, begging them to get me to talk to him. I had tried ignoring him. I had tried being direct and telling him to leave me alone, and neither worked. So I sent him pages and pages of everything that was wrong with him and all the ways he was terrible. I wanted to make him hate me so much he would finally leave me alone. Every evil thing I could think of, I said. After reading and processing this abuse, do you know what he says? "Give me a second chance." I say something along the lines of, no, not for the millionth time, no, leave me the fuck alone. And finally, he does. Thankfully, there were only 2 blips on the Dave radar after that. One was New Year's Eve, 2010, when he messaged me out of nowhere, asking if he could come to my New Year's party because his plans fell through. Obviously, the answer was no. The other was a month or 2 ago when he tried to add me on Facebook. Again, that was a no. The situation was actually pretty tame compared to what it could have been, and I'm grateful for that. It freaked me out at the time, though. Here's hoping the Dave saga has truly ended. Window creep. When I was a sophomore in high school, my immediate family, my dad's side of the family, and I went on April break in Florida. Everything was laid back, and my dad rented a nice 3-story house for a week that was a block or so from the beach and a block or so from the mini downtown, with various touristy shops and nice little places to eat. Towards the end of our 3rd day there, around 10 or 11 p.m., I decided I wanted to go night swimming in our pool, since my 2 brothers, sister, and I used to do so when we were younger, and I figured it would be a fun tradition to resurrect, and a nice way to round off the night. However, when I asked my younger brother, he declined since he was using his phone, presumably texting a friend or checking social media, in our 3rd-story bedroom. My older sister said she was too tired and went to sleep in her 3rd-story bedroom, and my old brother was playing poker with my dad and 2 uncles in the 3rd-floor common room. So determined not to let the tradition of night swimming die, I ventured out to the pool to go for a first relaxing swim and think about life. The pool at the house was rented and was on the first floor of the house, sandwiched between the first floor kitchen and streets, and surrounded by a small white plastic fence. Overall, it was a good spot to relax, especially at nighttime. For about 15 minutes, I swam a bit in the pool and relaxed, draping my arms over the side of the pool's edge and looking over the fence towards the palm trees. As my eyes lazily perused the night sky, the stars, the moon, my eyes glazed over, then abruptly locked onto something I still remember to this day. On the third story of a house diagonally across the streets, the shadowy figure of a man was framed by a third-story window, and his shoulders were squared directly downwards, pointed straight at me. His face was veiled with shadow, and he did not so much as flinch when I briefly looked at him, and as I quickly turned to get out of the pool, I dared not look back. As I speedily got out of the pool in a state of shocked revulsion, I weighed how long the mysterious man could have been watching me. What disturbed me the most was that nearly the whole time I had been in the pool, I was totally ignorant to this leering presence and prying eyes. I didn't even bother drying off outside as I scrambled inside and jogged up the stairs. On the far side of the house to the third floor, where my dad, older brother, and two uncles were playing poker. I told them what happened, and they brushed it off and continued playing poker. Still rattled by what I had seen, I went back to my room and dried off, telling my little brother what I had seen. He brushed it off too, and I went to bed, feeling revolted that my moment of peaceful relaxation had been so suddenly ended by the piercing gaze of the window creep. So, window creep, let's not meet.